Hey, welcome to the Virtually Speaking podcast. My name is Pete Fletcher, and joining me as usual is my good friend, Mr. John Nicholson.
Pete, it's good to be here, but I've got this feeling that somebody's watching me.
Yeah. And for those that can't see this, John and I are in what I think is called the fishbowl here in Palo Alto campus. Nice room. We're here doing a video shoot for VMware Cloud Foundation, but since we're here and there's so many great, talented people here talking about all the various products, we thought, hey, this is a perfect time to grab our good friend, Mr. Michael Roy, and get an update on Fusion. Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Good to see you guys. Always a pleasure to be in town, and it's always a party when you guys are around.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. But so Mike, tell us a little bit about what we're talking about today. We're talking about Fusion. I think everybody knows
Workstation and Fusion.
Workstation and
we got
Fusion.
both.
Yeah.
So not everyone is a Mac user, Pete.
Yeah, that is true. The whole desktop hypervisor story has changed a little bit, right?
A little bit over the years, yeah. It's certainly evolved. It's amazing how it came from what was originally called VMware 1.0.
Yeah.
You know, in my home office, I have the box like VMware 2.0 for Linux, and then VMware 2.0, VMware Workstation 2.0, and it's the same box.
GSX.
Those were a little later. They came
okay.
right after that because we're talking like 1999, early 2000. Wow. Porter Road was the address on the bottom of the box.
Oh, wow.
Back when we still sold boxes, right? So these things have so much legacy, and it's just amazing to see that we've had the support to continue these products throughout the years. And we've had to adjust. You know, there's been a lot of change happening, both in terms of us as an organization and the product, things people use them for, why they bother using them at all.
Yeah.
You know, originally back in the day, it was like, hey, I'm learning about VMs and like I need to maybe run a Windows print server underneath my desk, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And now it's this, incredible tool. People are bringing their devices to work. They're using it for Windows on the Mac. They're using it for running nested environments. There's all these new use cases that emerge because hardware got so fast over the past, decade, 10, 20 years, right?
Yeah. There are a lot of different use cases now. You took me back to the days of when we used to actually use them for print servers and stuff like that. So things are definitely changing. So
I was going to say, as a Mac user, I used it so that I could have my Windows tooling that was required for storage array management or things like that. But I feel like, some of that use case has changed. Are we still seeing people, use it just to run Windows on Mac or use it to like run a server? Or what are the workflows people are going after now?
Yeah, so it's definitely less about like running some persistent service, right? It's all about whether you're doing development or testing, and those can be anything from like, I'm learning about Linux and I want to test how Linux works. So you put it in a virtual machine and, that gets you started. Because I think, if you want to get into cloud, you want to get into anything IT, you need to have a good Linux background. Everything is Linux and, except when it's Windows. And even then, Windows, you'll see, has got a lot more Linux feel to it these days, right?
It does.
Both in terms of the great shell that they've got now, as well as just WSLs in there. They're literally baking Linux into it, right? And so, for us, Workstation and Fusion have been about using that as like a test sandbox nowadays, right? So while it's less about like bring your own device and run Windows on the Mac, now it's really more about how do we use these things as a test bed, right? Like I don't have ESX necessarily, but like local laptops, my laptop's got 64 gigs of RAM. Apple ships them now with 120 or 192 gigs of RAM, which is crazy. But you can run like an entire like VMware environment inside of that running nested as a bunch of VMs, right? So it's pretty incredible how amazing hardware has got nowadays. Like I even remember when I was in support, I started in 2009 and I was doing support for Fusion and Workstation. We led that team and we were doing it with like 5,400 RPM hard drives on laptops that had like 2 cores, at like 1.6 gigahertz per core, and
This is back when a VM boot actually took, minutes, not seconds.
Right. Like you actually had to watch that spinner go, and or like minimize it, and then like you couldn't really even use the computer because it would tax so much of the resources, even though you were still splitting it. Like there wasn't a lot to begin with. Right?
Yeah.
Nowadays, like like 128 gigs of RAM, 20 plus cores in a device.
I'm gonna run 4 million containers on this new laptop. So yeah, obviously there's this shift towards developer use cases and that types of things. There's been a lot of change, but I'm curious, like, what are some of the big announcements I guess we have to talk to today?
Yeah. So with that, we're now a part of Broadcom. We are within the VMware Cloud Foundation division within Broadcom. So we're VCF, which is the VMware home.
Yeah.
We're no longer a part of the end user computing. We left that in like 2018 or so. Not a lot of folks know that. It was some internal stuff.
Yeah, I think I've seen you answer that question on Reddit 400 times of no, we are not part of EUC. Fusion and Workstation are not spinning out.
No, exactly. And that's great news for everybody because, that investment that we're throwing into R&D, that affects us too, right? Like if folks don't know, like the base of Workstation and Fusion is the same base as ESX. Like all of that, what we call the monitor level, right? So like everything of the hypervisor itself. With Workstation and Fusion, it's just running on top of another operating system instead of ESX, which like is the operating system. So, that point being is we're very well positioned and safe in our home here in VCF. And that means, we're looking at how we do our use cases a little bit differently. So it's less, I think, in the future going to be about like bringing your Mac to work and like having that Windows corporate image there for you. It's going to be more about using them as a lab. And so as far as like changes that we've got coming down the pipe for how we go to market and how we sort of position the products, we're doing this huge simplification of our SKUs, right? So from right off the top, we had like 70 SKUs, and we're going down to 1.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's incredible. And so it's the...
How do you do that?
Just magic, right? It's the pen. And so basically what
Subtraction.
Sometimes addition, depends. No, it's a reduction in price. So we're moving to a subscription model. It's going to be $119 a year. It's going to be for commercial use only, though. So what that means is today,
What about home use? Yeah.
Yeah. So today we have Player, right? And so Player is you can buy it if you need to use it for commercial purposes. You have to have a commercial license for it. But if you're using it for learning and stuff, you can just go ahead and download it and use it for free. We are extending this to the Pro products. So let me say that again. Pro products are now going to be free for personal use and $119 in subscription for commercial use. So if you're using it in a business, you pay a license, you go through your partner, and you buy it with any other VMware piece of technology. But if you're a student, you're learning it in a lab, you're trying something at home, this is not work, go ahead. You can download it. It's pre-licensed, so you don't have to go and register and get another key or nothing like that. It's built into it. And so we've been adapting and updating the product to be less focused on like trials and like taking you to the store so you can go ahead and buy, and really just here's you go, use it, tell us what's working, what's not, and as we evolve with the community, we're going to continue to tweak the product to make sure that it's serving our needs. Like I said, running things in nested environments, running test environments to test VMware, to test other things, to learn.
It's pretty interesting seeing the use cases because I see the questions people ask on the internet about this product. And yeah, there's some people like, oh, I'm trying to run this engineering app or do this thing. But there is a lot of like, hey, I'm a security student. I'm trying to install this pen testing distro. Or, I'm trying to get passed through on a Wi-Fi so I can spoof ARPs or something on networking. Or people are trying to run like really ancient operating systems. I assume for like morbid curiosity. Somebody was asking questions about running Windows 98.
I saw someone asking about running OS2 the other day. I was like, dang.
Wow. Warp was a great cut, man.
Pre-Warp.
Like, I had a system that was, I think, in production for 30 years or something on Warp. That thing OS2 is...
Yeah, well, from virtual desktops, I used to use Parallels a lot. Like, how does this compare to like VirtualBox and Parallels like that?
Sure. Yeah. So with VirtualBox, they have a similar model where you can buy, a commercial license and you can use it for free. They're partially open source and partially GPL, and then they have some proprietary stuff. So it's a little bit of a hodgepodge there. But for them, if you want to use it for commercial purposes, you need to buy their expansion pack and their enterprise license.
I think it's like 20-seat minimum or something.
It's a 50-seat minimum.
Oh, wow.
At $100 a seat. Or it is $1,000 per socket.
Ooh.
So you can start with one socket at $1,000 until you need 5 of them, and then then you go for the pack, right? But so that's there's a tall ticket there. Parallels is $119, so we're pretty much evenly priced for there. I would say that we serve different use cases, right? Like Parallels is really about like count every license, make sure that every desktop is running Windows on the Mac, and they don't have a Windows product, they don't have a Linux product. So for us, we're giving you Windows, Mac, Linux, same price.
So that's the other thing I was going to ask. Before I had to pick Fusion or Workstation, and I had to pick up the base or the Pro or whatever, or try to use free Player if it was personal. Is this just all one SKU now?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like VCF, DH, Desktop Hypervisor, Pro. And that SKU maps for basically all of what existed previously.
So if my Windows Surface finally, implodes or something, and I decide to go buy a Mac, like my license can port over. That's fine.
Exactly, yeah. So it also makes it easy for IT departments where that who is
Punch outs, yeah,
they're going to be purchasing this, right? And so for them, it's not like, okay, how many Macs do I have? How many Windows machines do I have? And so we did some stuff earlier on to make the license keys interoperable, which was a good step in this direction. But now with just one SKU, the ethos of radical simplification that's how we're embodying that change.
Okay. And I also heard that the player is going away. Is that true?
Yeah, that's right. So because now Pro is going to be free, what we're doing is effectively freeing up a lot of our testing resources and letting everybody just have the full-featured product without necessarily...
Yeah, there were a lot of restrictions. You couldn't export OVAs and things.
Yeah, and for a while we stopped you from being able to create new VMs on Player, and then we added that functionality back, but we didn't really market it, so not a lot of folks even knew that you could do that.
Yeah, it was,
so they would just go to VirtualBox or whatever, right? So yeah, basically now Player had the same model. If you needed it for commercial use, you would buy the license for $149 or $179 for the new license. And then if you needed a free, you could just download it. If you're a personal user, you can use it for free. And so that being available for the full featured products does mean that these Player products go away. Now, so if you are an existing customer, we're going to continue to support you for the life cycle of the product. We're not just throwing everybody out here, right? And at the same time, as we sort of go forward here, the Player product will no longer be available for download, but it is a part, at least in workstation side of the house. On Fusion, it's one binary, so it's the same thing. But with Workstation, there's two binaries. But on Windows, we actually ship them, and Linux, we actually ship them both together. So when you get Pro, Player is there. So the Player product will continue to be there for companies that still absolutely need it, and they can pull it out of the binary and distribute it with their mass deployment and whatnot, as if like anything else. But as a product, it's no longer going to be for sale as of May 6th.
Oh, wow.
One thing with these products that I don't think people always realize all the different use cases and things you have. I have a standalone ESXi host at home that I didn't have a vCenter server for, and I actually used Fusion to manage it. This is something people don't realize, that if you miss the thick client, if you're that person, clamoring for the C# client, you can actually use it to connect to your ESXi host.
Yeah, totally. And so we're not getting rid of that, and we're not going to, Player couldn't do that. And so now everybody with Pro is going to be able to do that. If you had a standalone ESX host or a vCenter server stood up somewhere, you'll be able to connect to that from Mac, Windows, or Linux without having to, if it's your home lab, absolutely. If you're doing it in a commercial environment, obviously you're going to need that license. But that's a great way for folks to learn, get started with it. And then, you take your first step with Workstation, get some virtual machines going. Then you take your second step, which is standing up an ESX host somewhere. And then you can use this as a, thin, thick client. And thin in the sense of it only does a small number of things, and thick in the sense that it's a native app for connecting to your hosts.
Well, and for my case, I was trying to deploy, a container, a Linux instance to run some containers in, and I deployed it locally on my machine, and then I yeeted it over to the ESXi host that's running somewhere else in my house, and it's kind of cool being able to, start local, iterate, and then migrate it.
Yeah, and just drag and drop it to your other host, and away it goes. Which is nice too, because you can access your vCenter catalog. If you have a content catalog, you can access that, download those VMs, and just pull it.
I need to set up vCenter in this lab. I was rebuilding it, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, I mean, for those that don't know, obviously this is such a powerful tool to learn. Certainly for career advancement, for learning how you could literally be working on how to get your next job by studying and learning and getting in these test environments. Also for certifications and stuff like that. So
it's a great way to start your VCP, right? If you don't necessarily have an ESX environment in front of you to go through, install, configure,
you can run nested ESXi on top of
on top of nested.
Yeah,
not so much on Fusion. You can, because we do have an ARM product, but we're virtualizing, we're not emulating, and Fusion is an ARM design, and so you would run ESX ARM. Functionally, it ends up working the same as ESX x86, but there's no vCenter on.
Yeah, there's no vCenter ARM build yet. So, but yeah, that would be. Yeah, no, that's actually a good thought. Yeah, use Workstation for the design lab and things like that, and power it off.
Yeah, it's smart. I just built a PC not too long ago. It's a little, I haven't built one in a while, so I was able to splurge with a PCI 5 bus, really fancy SSD.
It's been a while. So you literally motherboard the whole night.
Oh yeah, the whole, balls to bones.
Nice.
Soup to nuts. Put a 4080 GPU unit with an i9 149K, whatever the top i9 14th gen is. So it's 24 cores. And 32 with hyperthreading, because it only hyperthreads the performance cores. And man, VMs just fly. I've got a nested VVF environment, and it's just Like,
Well, and
it's faster than physical. It's
Yeah.
nuts. Like the SSD is like 20 gigs a second or something. It's
Well,
crazy.
So this is something. This actually, as a reminder, these products work with big little core designs, right?
Yeah.
Unlike ESXi, which is like, what the heck are these cores that are not performing the same as the other cores? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, we still have a little bit of that. You know, we're working it through. But what's the interesting thing about Workstation is it's a bit of the tip of the spear, right? And so
Yep.
we pioneer a lot of technology on the desktop before it makes its way into
Yeah,
the
Intel
data
isn't
center.
shipping Xeons with big little.
Right.
They're just all
not
big
yet.
or all little.
But you can expect that that's probably something that's going to make sense if there's the right controls around it. You don't want to like deploy your workload and have it all of a sudden vMotion onto an E core that's only getting 1.6
Yeah, the
gigahertz of.
the scheduler is going to put the Windows print driver on the power core, and the efficiency core is where my SAP HANA threads are going to live. Like,
Yeah, who's going to notice? It'll be fine.
So-
So we had to do some stuff to kind of make sure that we're addressing that, and there's some more innovation that we're going to do specifically on the core thing. But a lot of the stuff that happens at that monitor level, like I said, makes its way back to ESX. So we, for example, in order to get Fusion to work on Apple Silicon, we had to re-engineer how the whole thing is built from the ground up, and that we're using some of Apple's APIs instead of our own with our own kernel extensions. So that meant we needed to create a new level of abstraction that we call the user level monitor. And that also went into Workstation thereafter, and that's how we can run in like Hyper-V mode, which has some limitations. We're using their APIs. We can only do what their APIs can do, right? So we work pretty closely with them to make sure that our use cases are being addressed, and like nested, for example, is one of those things we can't do on the user level monitor mode when we're in Hyper-V mode on Windows. But that technology.
I run my Docker in a VM, so I don't have this problem.
All Dockers run in VMs. That's what Docker is.
Yeah.
I mean, except
Yeah.
if you're on Linux and you're doing it natively, and then that's different, right? C groups all day, but yeah, like every Docker instance on a Windows or Linux or a Mac. is going to be inside of a VM, right? So even for me, I use Photon. I actually map Photon to my host after deploying it using the Docker machine driver, which is an open source project that I somehow ended up maintaining now. And so, yeah, we got to still update it, but it's a great way just to like do Docker without necessarily even having the Docker desktop.
You documenting that? Where did we learn about this?
Yeah, no, that's just from doing it. So I should probably maybe write something about doing
I
that.
agree.
Huh?
Absolutely. So where do people go to find out more about Photon and all this? Not Photon. You still got me thinking about Photon.
Workstation and Fusion. Yeah. What's the announcement?
Yeah, well, there's a few places, right? So the product pages are all going to get updated. So I'm not sure how the redirects are going to go. If you just go to VMware and you go to products, when you go to Workstation, there's basically going to be one product page. So we had like 2 trial pages, 2 product pages, then the category page, and all that's getting consolidated down to a single page that'll be like the desktop hypervisor page. Nice. And that's going to have everything that you ever needed to know and we're afraid to ask about Fusion and Workstation. Actually, it's going to be very minimal on content, actually.
So people should just follow you on Twitter or...
That's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Go to
Really.
williamlamb.com or...
Yeah, WilliamLamb.com, man, he is so fantastic with like getting folks to learn about how to do so much. And this nested thing is one that he's very passionate about. And we've worked a lot over the years in getting that content such that if you have that PC, you can just go to his site and pretty much learn exactly what you need to do to go through your install, configure, manage.
And I'll give you a sneak here. This is actually the first time I'm making this public, but we are presenting with William Lamb at a VMware Explore, and we're going to be presenting on Home Labs. So virtually speaking, is having a session.
Yeah,
And we're going to
Home Labs, hosted labs, all the labs.
Yes, all the labs. So we need to talk to you about that.
Oh, I was going to pitch doing exactly that. So I'm glad.
Well,
to hear
you
that
can
guys
join
are
the
taking
panel.
on.
Yeah.
Sweet. I'm on it.
Yeah, man, we're looking forward to seeing you there. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Always love to talk about it. Follow me on Twitter at Mike Roysoft. It's X now, but whatever. Yeah, and I post about this stuff a lot. So if you're going to find the latest thing, it's going to be right from this horse's mouth.
Absolutely. Very good. Thanks, Mike.
Cheers, guys.